Hey folks, it's Sam here on January 1st, 2020. I'm going to be talking about this month of January 2020, new beginnings, old frustrations. So we're starting, of course, a new year, a new calendar year, according to the Gregorian calendar. And, excuse me, and we have some big shifts that are coming up. Some happen every year, but more so in 2021, and we had similar shifts in 2020. So we're going to go and look at the specifics of those shifts. But again, there's a sense of renewal at the beginning of the year, resolutions, and sense of, again, starting a new chapter, because even though these Gregorian calendar dates don't refer to exactly, line up with something cosmological or cosmic, the reference points are still there. And I'm going to be talking about those things, the significance of this time of the year in general, a little bit, but then also just specifically what we can expect ahead for this January 2021. New beginnings, old frustrations. And since I am in that realm, I do want to also just alert people to this this forecast that you can get now that we are officially in 2021. That you can, I put the link there that you can get this 2021 forecast where I go over the 10 shifts you must know for 2021, finding light in the darkness. If you haven't done this yet, it's free. You just go to this webpage, click register now, and you can either register for an instant replay or a time in the next few days. Now, again, this is great. The first indicator is coming up here, January 12th. We have a new moon in Sagittarius, which is really like the official sort of beginning of the new year, in accordance with the way the Indians reckoned with the new year in the Vedas. They actually also began the new year around this time, but instead of it being pinned to some arbitrary calendar date, which just includes the Earth going around the sun, they waited until it lined up with the lunation cycle as well. And that's what we have coming up here on January 12th. That's really the official beginning of the year in many, in a more cosmic sense. Then we have this time to concentrate again. These things are coming up very soon, February 4th through February 12th. Again, I talk a lot about this in the upcoming, or in this free forecast. All these planets pile up in Capricorn. You want to know how that is going to affect you. Then we also have, we have a exalted Venus coming up. Again, you want to know what this is going to mean. We have Jupiter moving into Aquarius. Again, this is a big shift in 2021. And when you register for this free class, I'm going to talk about how the Jupiter shifting in between Aquarius and Capricorn, how that's going to affect your sign. Whether you're, if you're Taurus, it's going to be between your 10th and 11th, your 9th and 10th houses. If you're Gemini, it's between your 8th and 9th houses. So again, big transition for everyone, just based on the Jupiter cycles this year. So I talk about that in great detail, also in the forecast. And also, when you do register, you can get access to your individual forecast. Again, this is really powerful. I've done these every year where you can find out each of those 10 shifts here for your sign based on your ascendant. Like if you're Libra, all those shifts are going to affect you completely different than if you're a Capricorn. You can get your individual forecast for only $19.97, or you can do what most people do and buy all of them for only $79. Again, this is because all the people around you, they also, have different relationship with these transits. So again, go ahead and check that out, and you'll find, a lot of direction in those things. It's one of the easiest things that I can do each year to help people stay aligned throughout the year. These really important shifts throughout the year are important. This is how I use astrology in my daily life. I don't check my dashas all the time and everything every second. I look at these same things that I'm showing you in the free forecast, and then I notice them for myself because they're being seen from the perspective of Gemini, which is my sign. Friends I have who are, Capricorns or Leos or whatever, I know where they are in relation to those shifts as well. So go ahead and avail yourself of that if you like. Okay, so now we're here in January 2021, and this, again, as we start the year, we're here, and we start with the moon in Aslesha today. Pretty dramatic, day to start the year, this nakshatra of Aslesha is the entwiner. It's where we get, where we get sort of entangled or entwined, and also, in some ways, kind of emotionally stuck a little bit in something. And so again, it's often important to look at the nature of when something starts. But the real power of Aslesha is that power to embrace, but also that power, or it is the power to embrace like a mother or father embraces their child, or the way we embrace something that we truly love, where there's devotion and where there's pure love. There's a purity of the heart, because it's that sign of Cancer, where it's that purity of the heart. So this first day of the year, it's a very important intention throughout the year to try to keep that purity of the heart, try to keep that devotional state throughout the year, and notice that there's a quality of being devoted to something. Maybe you're not devoted to something that you should be devoted to. You're not devoted to your children or to God or to something higher. You're devoted to your ego, your desires, your opinions, your sense of being right, or no, I'm right and the world is wrong, and something that's negative. We become devoted to that. Notice how hard it is to get people out of their sad story or their dark story or all of that. What are you embracing? What are you devoted to? And that includes people who are devoted to that stuff. And again, this is an important thing to just look at just in general as the nakshatra, the moon nakshatra for this new year. Be devoted to something that's authentically uplifting, right? And again, you notice how people are often devoted to their misery and their unhappiness and their certainty that no matter what, it's going to suck, or whatever it might be. We're so inundated with so much of that now, especially in this world, with so many ways of interpreting the world. So that's just a beginning point here. But I'm going to move through and look at these these other placements, and look at where the planets are here in 2021, or in January, rather, of 2021. So as we start here, you see on this first day of January, Mars is up here in Aries, right? So again, we're pretty fired up, and Mars is in Aries for the whole week. I'm sorry, for the whole month. You see, even by the time we get to February, Mars is still in Aries. And if you've heard me talk about this, and again, in my 2020 forecast, I mentioned this as one of the biggest indicators in 2020, that Mars was going to be in between just these two signs, Pisces and Aries, for like 9 months. Mars went into Pisces last May 18th, I think it was the date of 2020. And then Mars went into Aries, then Mars went back into Pisces, now Mars is still in Aries again. 9 months of Mars in just two signs. and it's continuing. So when I talked about, the subject of this video was new beginnings and old resentments. Oh, I think I said old resentments, right? Wasn't that, what I said? This is the part that I meant, is that part that is old frustrations. I just brought it up. Old frustrations. It could have been old resentments because Saturn has also been there the whole time. So resentments are related to Saturn. Frustrations are related to Mars. It could be either one. And both of them are continuations of where we've been, right? They're not shifting so much in January 2021. They're carryovers from, again, Mars is carryover a lot of the frustrations from months ago, even back into, back into the summer when Mars first poked his head into Aries. So we're working through these frustrations. So one of the qualities of January 2021 is processing a lot of these old frustrations. And into February, we'll look and see exactly when it leaves. It's well into February, right? This is February 19th, and Mars is still in Aries. So that's a long time. So as we start the year, we're working through these old frustrations and battles. Now, we can see this socially with things going on. I don't want to make this too social, but obviously we see things like the politics and the other things that are happening in the world where people are still fighting and battling over things. And, again, a lot of these things are getting resolved, but they're getting resolved with the frustrations and some of the hostilities and all this stuff going on. So that's going to be a backdrop, of course, in January 2021. And again, one of the others, as we start here, Saturn is also in the same place that it was. This is the resentments, a lot of these things. Again, and that's the uncreative option. The creative option with Mars and Aries is we see what's going on, we accept it, and rather than being frustrated about what we lost, or what didn't work out the way we wanted, or our opinions about something, or the negative quality of Mars, again, which is to just be stuck in our opinions about things and keep fighting to change something that we need to be more sensible about. That's the negative quality of Mars. It's like, no, I'm right. It was wrong. And all this, that kind of stuff. Instead, it's to be courageous and say, no, this is what's going on, and now it's a clean break. So that's also the new beginnings part. So this Mars in Aries, in the early degrees of Aries, as we start January 2021, is gifting us that opportunity to be courageous and to create that new thing with enthusiasm, with courage, and especially when we're aligned with Dharma and purpose, and not just the rusty chains of our resentments and the things that we feel aggrieved about. And we have the possibility, we have the opportunity to do that. Everyone does. And again, things don't work out the way we want all the time, but you have to go on. And again, if they don't work out the way we want, it's just the way our ego wanted it. This is why it's impossible to really understand the higher qualities of astrology and the planets and all this stuff if you don't understand the higher qualities of consciousness and what I might call yoga, or Indian philosophy is built into all of this stuff. If you don't understand that part, then you're not going to understand the higher possibilities, because the only thing that feels frustrated or resentful or whatever is the ego. And those things are always going to happen. This is why I talk about these things in universal terms. No matter what, there are things you're frustrated about. I know it. You have frustrations. Or I should say your ego. Your ego is frustrated about some things. And based on those frustrations, you're held back and you cycle through the frustrations. And in your mind, you're like, you have these opinions that support the frustrations. Well, but it should be that way, and it should be that way. Should is a big Mars frustration keyword. It should be this, but it's that. And again, sometimes we fight to change things that should be better. If the thing that should be better is aligned with dharma and truth, like I'm a fighter, all that I fight for things all the time. I definitely have my sense of should and shouldn't. We all do. That's Mars saying it should be this way. This is wrong, and it should be like that. And I'm going to fight for that. It's worth fighting for that. But are we fighting for something that's just so we can win some victory for the ego, so that the ego can keep saying, "See, I was right." Particularly if it was, "See, I was right. You were wrong. You did this thing to me. You were wrong. You're stupid." Again, that's the ego, rather than, "Yes, I'm right. This teaching or this purpose or this thing is right, and it's worth standing up for." That's the proper use of Mars in the context of a fight. The righteous anger or fighting the good fight is always supported. But the only righteous fight is when it's to support dharma and truth. This is why the gods themselves aren't wrathful. But you see the fire of anger and frustration turned into destruction when dharma is being destroyed. When someone is destroying the truth, then we need to rise up and destroy the thing that's destroying the truth. Not because of ego, but because of dharma, like I say. And dharma is related to fire, and the fire of truth, part of it is destroying ignorance. Now again, it can be external, but it's mainly internal first. You have to destroy that internally first. Which means having that courage, the courage of Mars to destroy your own ignorance, which is to destroy all those opinions. And it's not hard to know what's an opinion and what's truth. Because everything that gets you emotional and frustrated and wanting and angry at someone isn't dharma, it's ego. Now again, it can be a catalyst because there's someone, let's say, doing something wrong, quote. But if it's just personalized at that person rather than at the next level, which is the teaching or the higher purpose, if your mission is just to destroy that person personally, again, that's ego. If you can just realize that the person is ignorant or whatever it might be, and then try to educate or aim higher than personal destruction, then you're aligned with dharma. And that means that you've destroyed your own frustration. So instead of getting into an ego battle with someone because they pissed you off about something, when that anger comes up to want to respond and fight back, instead of doing that, you could turn Mars inward and destroy your ignorance. Destroy that quality of your own ignorance and say, okay, that's just my ego. Instead, why am I triggered? And you might just find there's no higher purpose, that it was all just ego. In fact, that's most of the case. Most of the time, people aren't fighting for anything more than just trying to win. You might find once you destroy your ego part of it, there's actually nothing else there. It's like, oh, I just got triggered because, some childhood wound, because, my father treated me like, my father never listened to me, or I don't know, whatever it might be. And then you just make yourself stronger. So anyway, this quality of Mars is really big right now. So notice your reactivity. Notice your tendency to react. Again, if you're, if you're Aries, Scorpio, Leo, Sagittarius, especially those four signs where Mars is either a ruler or a fiery influence, notice this need to transform frustrations into courage and to introspect and be careful with your ego at this time. All of us need to be careful because, again, I just say this because when there's a matter of identity or a lot of passion in those signs where Mars is like a ruler or one of the fire or rules one of the trines. Again, there's a great possibility also of transforming that. But with all of us, we need to do it. Obviously. So again, this is all through January. This quality of Mars to be very fired up about something. Again, we also see that in January. Again, we start with Saturn and Jupiter here. Now, again, people focus on the Jupiter being debilitated. Again, Jupiter and Saturn just came together, exactly at the same point, and the point was right where Jupiter was debilitated. Hang on one second, please. Let this be a lesson to people. Look at how much inspiration around the world came from this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. Notice all the people who aren't weird astrologers saying, oh, Jupiter's debilitated. Notice how much, you hear me talk about this all the time, that people overstate that so much. Well, look at how much inspiration and hope and joy and wisdom and that came from this recent Jupiter debilitated. As Jupiter was getting in its deepest debilitation of 5 degrees Capricorn, the entire world was inspired about, oh, look at the beautiful Jupiter and Saturn. Jupiter, birth star, Christ consciousness, age of Aquarius. Like, now again, now in tropical, actually, it's not. But I'm saying this because this is a classic kind of Nichabanga. Whenever if a planet is debilitated, but it's joined its ruler, there's incredible power. So any of you watching this from now till eternity, if you get into this idea of, oh, a planet is debilitated, and you don't look at Nichabanga factors, I'm going to smack you. I'm going to give you a virtual smack. If you type it in my comments or anything, and anybody watching this, you're hereby empowered by Sam Jeppy to say, don't forget Nichabanga. So again, this Jupiter is still very close to its deepest debilitation, right? It's still very close to deepest debility. And Saturn, but Saturn, the ruler, is also right there, okay? So throughout Jupiter's entire transit, when it went into debilitation last year, as it's going through it now, Saturn, the ruler, is there. So this is going to continue. And we can see this quality, this sense where there might be a lack of hope in one way or another. Again, the only issue with debilitated planets, as much as anything, is that it tends to bring down the elation or the feeling of the that the planet brings. That it's actually much more psychological than anything else. And I'll tell you this, it's very interesting because the more I ponder like everything in Vedic astrology, it's very interesting how the rishis were so dialed into things like our feelings and our emotions and almost everything that's related to planets and signs and how to evaluate them actually just comes down to how it feels. There's an entire set of what are called avashtas. They're called Deeptati avashtas, which are just based on how the planets feel in their different dignities. Elated, alarmed, things like that. And all the ways to evaluate planets as being, strong or weak or benefic or malefic, it really just is about how they feel, mostly. And also a certain style, but it's mostly based on how it feels to us, knowing that feeling precedes action. It's a subtle realm. And that's what the zodiac band is. The Rashis or the signs are really how the planets feel for the most part. It's like the feeling matrix of the planets in different sections of the sky. So it just means that when Jupiter's in Capricorn, for example, those qualities of Capricorn, which are about restriction, determination, effort, bringing things down from the inspired place into the practical, okay, now let's work hard at it. It just means that those more elated qualities of Jupiter are hardest to come by at that point. But notice Jupiter goes into Capricorn right after it was in Sagittarius. So right at the place where it was at its highest elated state, Sagittarius, it goes into the place where now you need to work hard and apply yourself to that teaching. That's all it is. Don't make it more than that, ever, okay? Again, I'm kind of slapping people around today about this. I'm fired up about it. See, this is my Mars. I'm fired up about it, but I'm fired up about that. No, I want people to get this concept. It's so overblown. It has no bearing on results. It has nothing to do with yogas. It has nothing to do with what gets produced. It just has to do with a sense of feeling. And yes, that is very important. And it's important now because what happens is rather than being inspired in something that is, perhaps, again, very elevated, we look for inspiration, let's say, in things that are very material and in the most sort of degraded form. It can lead to things like being greedy or finding hope and meaning in things that are just very, again, practical, like money or strategy or controlling Earth. And, because Jupiter wants to take us beyond, Capricorn is very embedded, especially in our fears and our stresses and our worries. And Capricorn is where we navigate all the fears and stresses and worries of the world. So when Jupiter is debilitated, it can get stuck in all of that. Again, like I said, it's a feeling. It's like, okay, well, I'm trying to be inspired, but I got to pay my bills, I'll be inspired once I get, $50,000 in the bank. Then I'll relax and find God. But first I need, five houses or whatever it might be. So, but again, that's just a negative quality. If the ruler is there, if Saturn is there like we have now, then that difficulty gets absorbed and gets channeled by the ruler. And our teachings can become a very powerful catalyst for action and commitment and duty and responsibility and humility and a lot of things that Jupiter can get off on. Jupiter, we can be very pious and we can be very ungrounded in the things we believe. Yeah, we believe it, but we don't put any of it into practice. That's what problem of Jupiter. So I said this throughout 2020, and again, we're starting in 2021 with that same concept. Even though Jupiter is here, and again, it feels like there's a sense of effort. One of the things about the 2021 forecast that I said and that I kept saying is that, again, things are going to be stressful and difficult to some extent, but it's going to be, things are going to get more, things are going to get more hopeful later in the year, for sure, especially when Jupiter goes through Aquarius and gets into Capricorn. And again, you can see that, and I talk about it in the 2021 forecast. Again, 2021 has let off twists and turns, and surprisingly, it will be better than we anticipate. But the beginning of the year will be pretty intense, to say the least. It's right in the forecast. And this is why I'm saying it. Because look at all this intensity. We're finishing these frustrations of Mars. We have these resentments of Jupiter and Saturn. Again, this is what we got to cycle through with Saturn energy. It can be where resentments pile up. We remember the past. Again, we're hanging on to these kinds of things. We're going to get through it. And again, all of the fears and triggering, and again, a lot of the conspiracies and paranoia and stuff that's still going on in the world now. Again, I'm not trying to criticize it because, again, we need to notice how governments in the world and whatnot have responded to things like COVID and other things that are, bringing us into a lockdown again and whatnot. So again, we're working through all of this right now. So there's that intensity. And it's going to keep going for a few months. But again, you can just see by the time we get into this April 5th to September 14th, Jupiter moves into Aquarius. Things are going to start to turn around in that regard, right? So again, you can register for that, like I said before, and also look at your forecast as well for the upcoming year. But again, right now, we're still in this. As we start the year, you can see we're in it. And as I cycle through, let me get this up here. And as I cycle through January, you can see these planets separate a little bit more. And by the time we get into the middle of January, look at how many planets pile up there in Capricorn. And again, Mercury's going to go back here again. So we're going to have a lot of planets moving into Capricorn through January. Here's by the time we reach, here's the 8th, and then the sun goes in on the 5th, on the 14th. Again, all these planets pile up in Capricorn. Now that happens pretty much every year. We start the year with these, we start the year with a concentration of energy in Capricorn. It happens every year. But it's often just Sun, Mercury, and Venus. We already know they're going to go through that sign. But again, now we have Saturn and Jupiter also there, right? Last year we also had Mars. And again, when Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars all went into Capricorn, that's when COVID really hit. That's when the lockdowns really hit. So again, we can see we're starting here by the end of January. And again, this has already been stated that, COVID was going to, be very dominant again. The illness, people's responses to it, the polarizing around the issue, all that stuff is going to continue, obviously, for a while. And you can see how throughout the month, this is going to be an issue. Again, you see here on the 22nd now we have all these planets here. And I'll just even run it forward as you see what happens by the time we get into early February. Look, we have all these planets here. Then by the next week, let me go back here. This is the pileup that I talk about in the forecast. Look at this. Every planet except Mars, that includes the moon, is in Capricorn. This is in early February. But even when it's not the moon, there's still 5 planets there in Capricorn for about 10 days. So again, look at what's coming up. This is going to be very intense as February begins. So again, these are going to be the dominant themes through January. This new beginnings, this Mars enthusiasm, this need to really introspect, start the year strong. It's good to start this year, to start January with a conviction, with the typical resolutions and whatnot. Mars in Aries is really bringing the juice. You're fired up about something, and instead of being fired up about things that frustrate you, it's better to be fired up about your ego and killing it and destroying it and connecting to the heart and realizing that your frustrations are just that. Your frustrations comes from the fact that you're still an ego trapped. Your soul is trapped in an ego. And an egoic structure that gets its feelings hurt, that wants to lash out, that wants to play games like the ego does when it gets its feelings hurt. Every sign or every person does this differently, but it's not that complicated. You're not that special. None of us are. We're all snowflakes. We're all special snowflakes, and snowflakes are just frozen water as well. It's really not that complicated. Because it takes a different form, it's not that interesting, ultimately. And it's not that interesting to to gurus and spiritual teachers or whatnot. It's interesting to the ego because the ego wants to think it's special. And it's not. It's not special. You're not special. I'm not special. And the more specialized we make ourselves and the more like, oh, I'm so... what about my unique blah, blah, blah? This is where the ego just goes to town. But my story, but my childhood, but this, but that, but... Again, Mars makes things really simple. It says, that is the problem. Now, are you willing to do you have the courage to really take things on? You think you have courage to argue with somebody or have a tantrum over something or show how strong you are because you'll blah, 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 whatever we might do. Real courage is to say, ugh, boy, I'm a mess. I'm stuck in all of this. Okay, let me just be strong and present and courageous. And the planets that bring that juice are mainly Mars and Saturn. And they don't get much stronger than they are right now. For all of January and into February. That doesn't mean it feels good. It doesn't mean... It means we have to take on the challenge. Saturn is ruling all of those planets there. Look at that. I mean, again, Saturn is really they're all in Capricorn, and Saturn is there saying, okay, I got you. Don't worry. You're here to have to be alone and make peace with time and your fears and your resentments and all that stuff. But I got you. This is right where you're supposed to be. And Mars is given the courage to say, okay, I can handle this challenge. And again, because we're living through the ego's like, no, it is them. And it gets hard. If we keep pointing the fingers, it can get pathological because now it builds up. The energy is there. So when the power is there and the energy is there, it gets magnified. Because Mars needs to destroy something when he's in Aries, and Saturn needs to control something when he's in Capricorn. This is why you see things get so extreme when planets get in those areas. And this is, again, why they talk about, this is why planets are categorized as benefics and malefics and all that. Because it's, quote, malefic to destroy something. It's just a matter of what you're destroying. Are you destroying something that's false? Or are you destroying something that's real? Your ego is false. Destroy that. Destroy your opinions about why you're frustrated. Opinions about why, that's garbage. Again, Saturn needs to control something and organize something. And again, the only thing to really control is yourself and the moment. If we start thinking about the future, we know where that's headed. I don't care what the world looks like. We know where the future is headed. And it's headed to a place where we're not going to survive. This ego and this body will be destroyed. So Saturn is where we become aware of that. So what do? Try to hang on to this thing that we know is going to go away? Or do we say, okay, Saturn is there saying, okay, you're aware of this now. I'm in Capricorn saying you are not going to bypass this now. Again, when the planet gets in its sign, it says, okay, this is real now. So that's why Saturn and Capricorn for the last year, the reason 2020 was so hard, again, it was hard for everyone to some extent, but many people really thrived in that. It was so hard relative mainly to your capacities with Saturn. And that ain't going to change in 2021. Those who are able to stay grounded and stay focused and stay down to earth, practical, still, present, and not get triggered by the latest thing that's blowing up or something, 2021 didn't feel as bad as it did to others. Again, that's not the only consideration, but that's a big one to look at. 2020 didn't feel as bad. So this is a theme for the year, and also in January, this is, as you see, this is by January 14th, all these planets piling up here in Capricorn, including the moon. And then Venus comes. So let's go back and look at a few other important touchstones here. Now again, this is that new moon. Let me take a quick drink here. So that new moon here is happening on the 12th. Now again, the reason this is so important, and this is what I consider to be the real beginning of the year, or of a 5-year yuga cycle in Indian energetics, because this is what was in the Vedas, was in the Yajur Veda and the Rig Veda within their timekeeping. Their timekeeping said that the yuga, or the 5-year cycle, starts, and each year starts on the new moon when the sun starts moving north, and then we have a new moon. At the time, it was in the month of Magha. That's when it happened, based on precession. But this new moon after the solstice, again, first we wait for the sun to start moving north. That's the solstice that we just had. Then the next new moon after the solstice, that's when you start the year. That's when you start the month. And the months are aligned with the seasons. And that starts the year. So the year, the calendar month, the lunar month, and the 5-year cycle begins at that time. So this is really the beginning of the new year, as far as I'm concerned. Because again, when we just started on January 1st, it has no relationship to anything cosmic. Okay, it's an approximation. But the reason, they used to start the new year in March, which was approximating the vernal equinox. Right? So again, the Gregorian calendar has gone through all kinds of stuff, which I don't feel like explaining that much. But the reason we start the year now in what we call January is because it's the month that begins after the solstice. Of course, why we have Christmas, it's a celebration of that as well. So this new moon is really kind of like the beginning of the year. This January 12th is really the day to set an intention. And it usually happens in either Purva Ashada or Uttara Ashada. Here it's happening in Uttara Ashada. And again, we never know exactly what day it will be. Oops, this would be hours. As you can see, the sun is in Uttara Ashada. Let me make this bigger. As you see, the sun is in Uttara Ashada. And the sun and moon will come together there at 29:05 or something. 29:02, 29:04. That's the beginning of the cycle of Sagittarius, but also more importantly, I consider it to really be the beginning of the new year. The new moon after the winter solstice. So, and not just I did, the Indians did as well. It's in the Vedas. I did a recent video explaining those things where I talked about the calendar, the solstice, and whatnot, and I read through those texts. You can find that video in my video list on YouTube or other places. So this is an important day, and as you see, this is happening in Uttara Ashada, which means later victory, guaranteeing our victory. And again, that's very important to moving from our hopes and those hopes of Sagittarius into the commitments and the duties and the hard work, especially of the soul making peace with life on earth that we have with Capricorn. Capricorn is really about that quality. Capricorn and Saturn, of course, the ruler, is about making peace with the fact that, no one gets out alive in an ultimate sense. So it really also shows how, with the year happening now at this time, And as we move into the later part of January, and once the sun also moves into Capricorn, it's going to be imperative and totally necessary for us to be more introspective, to cultivate more stillness, more solitude, imbibe silence and peace. You have to and contrast silence and peace with happiness, joy. I'm happy. Happiness is an emotion. And yes, we want to be happy. But again, happiness is a byproduct of some outer experience that makes us happy. And as we're trying to find something to make us happy, we're trying to avoid something that's going to make us sad. This will make me happy, okay. This will make me sad, oh no. Happy, sad, happy, sad. That's called karma, and it's not dharma, because it's a cycle. There's the deeper state of peace and oneness is not an emotion. It's a state of mind that is fundamental. It's your true nature. Just like a wave is a wave. An emotion is a wave. But being in the water where there's no wave is a different thing. And tapping into a deeper current, and there's a current that flows even though it's not on the surface of a wave, which is much more foundational. It might not be big highs, but it's also not big lows, and there's not that attachment. So this is really what Capricorn and Saturn energy is about. And these are really the big themes of January 2021 on a personal spiritual level. Again, within that, we're going to have cycles and cycles here and there. Probably do another video where I talk about each day. Maybe I'll go through each day. And I would go through each day with the moon transit, because the moon changes each day, moves from different signs into different signs. But this one I wanted it to be mainly about the overall feeling. Now, I will also just say that we're going to have a shift here January 3rd with Venus going into Sagittarius. We're starting the year with Venus in Scorpio, which is also, again, we're right on the edge of a shift here. So Venus moving into Sagittarius on the 3rd, and for most of the month, will be a noticeable shift. So if you've had some real intense, especially romantic, because Venus is so much about other people and partners and all of that thing where you're trying to intimately navigate partnerships or whatever. Venus has been in Scorpio for a few weeks. And again, it's not the easiest place. Frankly, neither is Sagittarius, but Scorpio is more where there's more tendency toward dark emotional triggering with Venus going through Scorpio. And again, also deep passion and whatnot. All of that's there. But I'm just saying, if you have felt more of the darker qualities of the last few weeks, especially as it relates maybe to relationships or this or that, some of that will shift on the 3rd, on January 3rd, when Venus goes into Sagittarius, where it's not as emotionally, intense, where we're not trying to, where we don't feel as things like jealousy or negative projections around partners and stuff like that. Again, it could also be, if you're in a good relationship, that Venus in Scorpio or something, it can also, there's certainly beneficial qualities to it, like, deeper devotion and whatnot, and that has been the benefit. Venus going through Scorpio has also brought about a more devotional nature. Again, I wouldn't say necessarily in relationships, but more devotional possibilities, like to God and to beauty itself, transcendent beauty and whatnot. But it often has a difficult effect on romantic relationships, because that's really not what we do in romantic relationships often. And Venus is very much about that agreement. Were you fair to me? Were you nice to me? Were you polite? And all of those things, Scorpio just kind of grinds to a pulp. and is really just looking for that oneness in the heart. So it gets a little bit, distorted. So again, Venus is going to go into Sagittarius, like I said, and be in Sagittarius for most of the month. Sagittarius is different. It's more, again, it's where we're looking for a more expansive type of relationship with other people. Again, that can be a little difficult as well because there's a lot of projection there. There's a lot of soulmate fantasy and then disappointment. So it can have that quality as well as Venus goes into Sagittarius. But it's often not as psychologically and emotionally, again, emotional frustration is actually a real kind of hallmark of Scorpio energy in general, is the kind of emotional frustration. So with Venus leaving that, moving into Sagittarius, which is more about relationships that have to do, or interactions that have to do with finding hope, it'll at least not feel perhaps as frustrating if you've been going through that. And it is good for finding a higher principle and a higher common ground with people that you engage with. And again, it doesn't have to be romantic partners. It could be friends, colleagues, and wanting to create something beautiful with people. Like, if you're a teacher or a student or whatever, building a sense of a higher vision and working through those higher principles with people in your life. You can really find that from January 3rd through the rest of January, you could feel your relationships be more, a little more elevated in that way. If you're still angry and frustrated, and then you might be angry and frustrated about the soulmate fantasy disappointment. So that's that possibility too. But maybe hearing this will help you introspect a little bit, and rather than now blame the frustration that you carried from Scorpio into Sagittarius on you said you were this, but you were really that, and I thought you were God, but you were the devil. Again, that polarizing can happen in Sagittarius as well. Try not to do that. Instead, find a higher purpose than just trying to find, seeing others as a way to make you happy. Because actually, that's the negative quality of Venus. As much as we think we're so evolved and enlightened, even in our relationships, there's so much fantasizing that goes on. Oh, I would have done everything. I'm so this, I'm so that, and they were so mean. Underneath it all, we're really in it for ourselves. You got to be honest about it. It was about how you felt. And being honest about that is, again, this is why it's hard to be honest in life. And even if Venus going through Scorpio, if you were really honest, and if you were frustrated with partners or whatever, if you were really honest, you would say, well, you know what? I did my share of disappointing them too, and I did my share of, demonizing and whatever as well. So again, if you were enlightened about that part, then you develop greater compassion and devotion. If you're not, then you're just sort of triggered. Same is true in Sagittarius, right? So with Venus, it's really important for us to elevate beyond just seeing other people as an extension or reflection of our happiness. We can get really stuck in that. Again, it also doesn't mean that there aren't real issues. Like maybe you are in friendships or relationships where you feel like you're giving all the time. Again, ways to talk about that and ways to process that without triggering and judgment and attacking and all of that stuff is also what Venus is here to do. And when Venus is in signs like it was just in Libra before that, then that negotiation feels much better. When Venus is in Libra, we enjoy that negotiation more. Then it goes into Scorpio, it doesn't feel as good. Sagittarius, again, it can feel this way. So keep that in mind. That is a big, shift, probably the biggest planetary shift, besides the ones that I'm talking about, as you see by the time we get to the end of January. They've all basically shifted from Sagittarius into Capricorn, but Venus has been behind a little bit here. Venus is going to go, Venus is, lagging behind a little bit here. So anyway, this is what I wanted to say for for January 2021. And again, if you're interested in, where is it? Okay. And again, if you're interested in your forecast for 2021, after you register for this, you can go there. And in fact, here's the, where is it?
2021 is going to be full.
Yes, it is. Wait a second. Turn this off. So I'll put the link, also the direct link to the personal forecasts here, because people ask me. So that's where you can get the personal forecast as well on this page, right? It's right there. But if you haven't registered yet for the free 2021 forecast, you can get that as well. But I definitely encourage people to also invest a little bit and see how these 10 important shifts will benefit you and will be experienced by you in 2021. So I appreciate everyone coming today, and instead of watching football games on TV shows, you're watching the Sam Show. So I hope you enjoyed the Sam Show today. Start your 2021. Yeah. So anyway, I appreciate you. I'm glad that you're, that you are, part of my life in this way, and I hope it's been helpful for you this last year and going forward. Don't get triggered. Don't spin out on stuff. We have a lot of intensity to get through this first part of 2021. Like I said, I go through it a lot more in the forecast, but we're making the world. We're the ones that are doing it. Your mind and energy and consciousness is the world. It's not something out there. And astrology helps us understand this and be a master of it rather than being, tossed around by the negativity. So allow this knowledge to hopefully really strengthen your faith in the divine wisdom that's unfolding, and see going forward the great blessings that are ahead. And I hope you had some great blessings in 2020. I try to be careful not to contribute to negativity as much as possible. I'm sure I do my share of it. But so many negative memes about 2020, how it was so horrible and so this and that. I get it. It wasn't fun. But it was also a time where there was enormous growth. If you were able to grow, if you were strong, a lot of things got stronger. Again, that's the nature of Saturn. That's the nature of Capricorn. It strengthens things that can be strengthened and lets go of things that are worn out. Things that have run their course will tend to disappear or require too much effort. And so with Saturn, we either can let them go or we're forced to let them go, and that's what feels hard. So we were forced to really grow up a lot in 2020. And those and relative to how immature you are about certain things that left you, you felt like they were taken from you. So much was taken, we lost so much, crying. Look, again, I'm not trying to belittle it. I'm just saying that's all it is. We have to, and things shifted, things changed. And relative to the things that you were ready to let go of, you felt better. You feel stronger about the things that changed, that even at the time were maybe scary, but now you've endured them and you feel better as a result of those things that are gone. That's the difference. So instead of thinking that, well, there's the good part and the bad part and the good part and the bad part, just be in it. Get out of the judgment and the polarity and all of that, and just say all of it is the good part. Or all of it is necessary. All of it is the truth unfolding externally and internally. And again, at the beginning of 2021, for the first couple months, especially with Mars and Aries, all those planets in Capricorn, particularly Saturn, and all those other planets, this is the juice of transformation. Because it's not easy. We have to destroy a lot of negativity and a lot of darkness. And we don't do it, we don't destroy negativity and darkness with the moon or with Mercury. No, that's not the ones that do it. We do it with Mars and Saturn. So, anyway, I hope this was helpful.